Hi, this is Amy from OpenWater. Today we're going to offer a speaker training for virtual conferences. This training is going to cover everything that happens after your Zoom room has been opened. You'll also receive brief instructions covering how to start your Zoom room from the OpenWater platform. Please note that we're only going to be reviewing the settings for Zoom meetings in this training. Zoom webinars work quite similar but have a few extra features to consider. Here's our training agenda. We're going to cover how you can practice using Zoom and OpenWater's security recommendations. We're going to review the most common Zoom features to become familiar with. Next, I'm going to give you a warm-up checklist that you can use before each session begins. Then I'm going to show you what the most common conference scenarios look like with my own computer screen. Here at OpenWater, we strongly encourage speakers to get familiar with Zoom before their virtual conference date. You can follow this link and sign up for a free account to test your audio, camera, and screen sharing. You'll have full access to most of the features we discussed today with your free account. Please note that there are some country restrictions for free Zoom hosting accounts. OpenWater applies a few automatic security settings to avoid Zoom bombing and ensure your session runs smoothly. Randomized passwords are set per meeting room. We set all participants to mute by default. And unless directed otherwise by your virtual conference coordinator, we don't allow participants to unmute themselves by default. If you're hosting a very large session or if you have additional security concerns, we may recommend Zoom Webinar, which ensures that by default, no one attending can share their camera or audio without explicit permission. The first feature we're going to review is the Zoom waiting room. OpenWater is going to turn the waiting room setting on by default. This allows the speakers and anyone else involved in the planning, such as a tech person, some time to get ready before the attendees are listening in. Ideally, you'd like any co-presenters to join about 30 minutes before the session so that you can assign them as co-hosts. You can see here that my co-host is in the waiting room. Let's check that out now. This is what the waiting room looks like. If you'd like, you can send a message to everyone in the waiting room by clicking here. Find your co-host's name under Waiting and hit Admit. Now that she's in the room, let's review some of the options next to her name. We can chat with her, ask her to start her video, make her the host, make her the co-host, rename her, put her back in the waiting room, remove, or report. These are the options that are going to be available to you as the host for all participants. Let's start by making her the co-host. It's a best practice to at least have one other co-host in the room in case the main host has any internet connection issues. Later in this training video, we're going to review a speaker warm-up checklist that you'll complete while the waiting room is enabled. For now, let's assume you're ready to start your session. There should be a list of attendees under the waiting list. Select Admit All to let them in. Once the session begins, you have two options in regards to the waiting room. If you'd like the attendees to be admitted as soon as they click on the Join Session link, you'll need to go to the Security tab and turn off Enable Waiting Room. This first option is going to be the most common scenario for most virtual conferences. If you don't want attendees to be able to join late, or if you want to admit them on a case-by-case basis, you can keep the waiting room feature turned on. Muting and unmuting participants. It's always a good idea to double check your muting security settings. I'm going to do that by going to the Security tab to ensure that I'm not allowing participants to unmute themselves. Looks good. There's a few other options to review also. Anytime I hit on the Participants tab, I see a quick button over here called Mute All. Keep this button in mind in case anything happens live where you need a quick way to solve the problem, such as unexpected loud background noise from one of your speakers. I can also request that someone unmute themselves here. This would be helpful if one of your co-hosts or presenters forgets to turn their microphone on. Screen sharing best practices. Always make sure your computer notifications are turned off before sharing your screen. If you have a PowerPoint, video, or something else you'd like to share, you're going to start by selecting Share Screen from the navigation bar. The options that appear will depend on what applications and windows you have open on your computer. It's typically best to share the application itself. I'm going to share this MP4 from my QuickTime player. Since there's going to be sound on my video, I make sure to select Share Computer Sound. OpenWater does not recommend selecting this button here, Optimize Screen Share for Video Clip. We found it distorts the quality. Click Share when you're ready. Note that you can share your screen with or without video. You can start the video by clicking on the button here and change your camera views here. We'll have more on camera views in a moment. For now, if you're ready to stop sharing your screen, select Stop Share. Camera views. There are two main camera views, Active Speaker and Gallery. The Active Speaker view will only show the camera of the active speaker. In the Gallery view, there will be a grid of all the participants' video. The host camera view is what is set by default on all the participant screens. You also have the option to spotlight a speaker. Just click on a speaker and choose Spotlight Video to keep focus on them. Click on them again and choose Cancel Spotlight when you're done. There are a few things to note about recordings. If you share your screen with the active speaker thumbnail, the recording will display the thumbnail in the recording in the top right corner. If the active speaker thumbnail is not on or is disabled in your Zoom settings, only the screen share will display in the recording. Please note that the screen share with gallery view is not supported for Zoom cloud recordings. Polls. It's important to note that polls can only be created on the spot by the admin of the Zoom account. This means that as a speaker, you'll likely need to get these set up beforehand if you're planning on using them. Assuming that your poll was already set up, all you need to do is select Polling, find your correct poll, then select Launch Poll. Once you enter poll, you have the option to share your results. Next, we're going to talk about breakout rooms. Breakout rooms allow you to split your meeting into smaller sessions. For example, if you have a meeting with 60 people, you can split it into 10 rooms of 6 with just a few clicks. To test breakout rooms, you need at least 3 participants in your meeting. Let's try it out. The first thing you have to decide is if you want to create the rooms automatically or manually, and how many rooms you'd like to create total. Let's go with manual. You can rename the rooms and make room assignments. Then click on Open All Rooms when you're ready. As the host, you can join any breakout room. You can also send a message to all rooms by clicking here. To bring everyone back into the main room, select Close All Rooms. One quick note about recording. OpenWater will have already discussed if you want your sessions to be automatically recorded or not. If you need to start or stop a recording for any reason, you can do so by clicking on the Record button here. For the purposes of the rest of this training, we're going to assume that all sessions are automatically recorded. Next, we're going to review the speaker warm-up checklist. This will be a bit unique depending on your individual session needs. For example, some people assign a designated tech person that we call a room monitor to each session. In that case, they may be the one to run through some of these steps. Or, if there are several speakers in a session, one speaker may be designated as the session chair who will handle these steps. But as a general guideline, whoever starts the room should also follow these steps. Ensure the waiting room is on. Ensure participants cannot unmute themselves. Admit other presenters and elevate to co-host. Ensure the correct speaker's cameras and audio are either on or off. Admit all when you're ready for your attendees. The last step is to disable the waiting room. I'm going to run through these steps one more time in Zoom. Ensure waiting room is on. Check. Ensure participants cannot unmute themselves. Check. Admit other presenters. And elevate to co-host. Check. Ensure the correct speaker's cameras and audio are on or off. Check. It looks like I'm good to go, so I'm going to select Admit All. Finally, I just have to disable the waiting room. Now we're going to review the most common scenarios you're going to encounter in Zoom so you can see what the flow would look like during your session. Scenario 1, pre-recording only. In this scenario, I know that I only have to worry about my pre-recorded session, so I'm going to get that prepped while all the attendees are still in the waiting room. So I'm going to select Share Screen, Share Computer Audio, select my QuickTime Player, and select Share. Because I selected to share the application itself, it doesn't matter if my mouse or any windows go over it. Now that the video is all ready to go, I can click on Participants, Admit All, and then turn off the waiting room to complete my speaker warm-up checklist. Everything is ready to go, so I'm going to play my video. Once it's over, I just need to stop sharing my screen and end the meeting. Scenario number 2, pre-recording and live Q&A after. Now we're going to review how you'd host a Q&A or other live portion after your pre-recorded video. Getting your video set up will follow the same steps that we just covered, so we're going to start here, where your pre-recording is being shared. As long as I'm sharing the application itself, I can feel free to open the chat box and keep an eye on incoming questions. Once my pre-recording has ended, I'm going to select Stop Share. Then I'm going to turn on my audio and video while I answer questions that came in through the chat. Once I'm finished, I'm going to select End Meeting. Scenario number 3, multiple speakers in a row. If you're going to have multiple speakers, one after the other, the most important piece is staying organized. Make sure all of your speakers know what order they're in ahead of time, as well as knowing who is directly before and directly after them. OpenWater recommends giving a verbal cue to each of your speakers before they have to go on, so they have time to prepare. For example, as the host, I might say, and now we're going to be covering the topic of virtual conference software with Alexandra Height. Seeing as you've already made them co-host during the speaker warm-up checklist, they'll have the ability to turn their audio and camera on or off by themselves. If one of your speakers is lagging on turning either one on, you can give them a nudge by asking them to unmute here or asking them to start their video here. Beyond that, just make sure all the other speakers' audio is off so it doesn't muffle the sound during their presentation. Scenario number 4, panels. Organization is also very important in panel sessions. OpenWater recommends doing at least one dress rehearsal with your panel to ensure it runs smoothly. Common problems that can occur during panels are people talking over one another, muffled sound, and background audio drowning out the other panel members. These problems can all be solved by thorough dress rehearsals. All of your panel members should have been made co-hosts during the speaker warm-up checklist. Then simply start your own audio and video. You'll likely want a grid view during panel sessions. Make sure your other panel members have their audio and video on before admitting your attendees from the waiting room. If you do run into any problems during the middle of your panel, remember that you can always click on Participants and then mute all while you troubleshoot your issue. And that's it for your speaker training. Practice in Zoom as much as possible before your conference date. Pay close attention to your speaker warm-up checklists and stay organized. Know exactly what you're responsible for and what you need to do during your virtual conference session. Thanks for using OpenWater.